Texas House District 7, a contest. One well-known Republican looking to secure a 5th term and a Democratic challenger aiming to, in her words, turn East Texas true. KLTV's Michael Richardson sat down with State Representative Jay Dean and farm teacher Marlena Cooper to discuss this race.
Gregg, Harrison, and Marion. These 3 East Texas counties will have their say in November when they vote for their next representative in Austin. Both candidates for State House District 7 discussed their campaigns in Longview, starting with Democrat Marlena Cooper. Who exactly is Marlena Cooper?
Marlena Cooper is a hometown girl from Jefferson, Texas.
Rain sprinkled outside as Marlena showcased her home, adorned with various books, inspirational messages, and instruments, including a piano from her parents.
That's another reason that music is so important to me, because it shows the sacrifices that my parents made in order for us to have things.
At 42 years old, Marlena is looking to secure her first election to the state capitol. She says her priorities, if elected, include strengthening women's rights, bolstering rural health care, and improving education. A former educator, she says she does not support school vouchers and would work to repeal them if passed by the state legislature.
It would not have any good standing in the rural areas, seeing schools like New Diana have to go to 4 days, or us in Longview ISD having to pass large bond referendums, or schools like Jefferson not being able to get the support that they need and hire the staffing they need. That's a problem for me.
The glass exterior of Republican State Representative Jay Dean's office building in Longview is impossible to miss. Inside the 71-year-old Louisianan's office, each frame tells a story, including one picture with Dean holding the gavel.
That was pretty interesting, because most freshmen don't get a chance to do that, so that was my freshman session.
If elected to a 5th term in the Texas House, some of Dean's priorities include reducing property taxes, strengthening border security, and improving public education. One of those ways he wants to improve public education? Not passing school vouchers.
I agree, parents being able to, have the choice of where they think their kids should go in order to get the best education. But what we have to be careful of is that, we have things in place to protect our great rural schools.
Earlier this month, KHOU 11 reported that Representative Dean used campaign funds to pay for a state jet to attend his grandson's graduation in May of 2023. Texas election code prohibits candidates from using campaign funds for personal use. To fly during that specific trip, you did use campaign.
Absolutely. That was a community event, which the law is clear about, that can be used for that.
As Election Day approaches, here's what both candidates say to voters.
Vote for what they believe is going to have the greatest effect on their families.
My closing argument's going to be my opening argument. Look at my record.
The future of District 7 will be decided on November 5th. Michael Richardson, KLTV 7 News.